Here is your video and explanation for the proposal paper. We are going to work through this in a few weeks, and we are going to use a lot of the stuff that we've already done this semester. It's kind of the point of getting here, right? Module D. And so the proposal essay is really your best answer to the problem that you have found in your career line. Okay? And of course we have rules, right? We have things that we have to do for a proposal. You're going to use the sources that you already have, or you may find a few more that you need to have. Go ahead and put those in. Make sure they also end up in your research log so you don't lose points at the end. You're going to write an essay discussing the problem and the solution. Ideally, you can use your proposal outline to write the paper. Okay. When we get to, I think it's D4. Sorry, I turned things over and then I need them again. Yeah. When we get to D4, you're going to do an outline. And this is fairly early on in the module. So for me, like I said in that intro video, for me, an outline can be very stifling and can help me, can really kind of push me into a corner. I have learned to think of my outlines as suggestions as opposed to this is the way it has to be. Now, some people are not in that mindset, and they can write an outline and use that outline and write their paper and never have a bit of trouble. So just keep in mind, it doesn't have to be exactly the way your paper is going to turn out at the end, but if it does, hooray! And if you end up doing something slightly different again, hooray! It doesn't matter, as long as you get things done and that you're comfortable with the process. Okay?
Okay, so the proposal essay from D11, there are certain requirements that you have to have. Okay, these are not negotiable. Okay, this is where it gets kind of fun-ish. So you have to have all the sections that we required from the outline, and I'm going to get to those in just a minute. It needs to be at least 6 pages. If you need to write 10, by all means, write 10. But it has to be at least 6 full pages of text. That does not count the title page, and it doesn't count your references either. Okay? It has to be APA 7th edition format, your student paper version, including the title page and section headers, and we're going to talk about those in a minute as well. You have to cite at least 7 full sources. Okay, we've been working on credibility all semester, so at least 4 should be scholarly, peer-reviewed stuff, or professional trade sources. Okay, the other 3 can also be scholarly trade sources, but you can have, and it's very appropriate to have some popular stuff, you know, Time Magazine, Forbes, that kind of stuff, and it's fine. That's good too. Okay, so organize effectively. Order your paragraphs according to the outline instructions in a way that will be effective. Okay, each paragraph should also transition one to the next, Okay, it has to follow. It can't just watch out for those abrupt changes. People, we have a hard time keeping our heads about us with those. Make sure that each paragraph focuses on a single topic or main idea. You know how to write paragraphs. Okay, make sure these follow the rules. Okay. You should have a topic sentence, and you should have a concluding sentence. Everything in the middle should fit between those two. Okay? Don't just regurgitate information. This is a synthesis project, and so you're supposed to be able to take multiple pieces of information and put them out in a way that makes sense. Okay? Not just daisy chain one thing after another. Okay? There's a note in here about paraphrases and quotes. Basically, everything that is not your personal idea
You need to cite it, whether it's a paraphrase, something you put in your own words, or a direct quote, something that you're using their wording for, and be careful that you're not plagiarizing by using their information and not citing it. And we've talked about this, and you've had lots of stuff on this, so I don't think this is a big deal. Just reminding you. Typically, 2, maybe 3 citations per page is plenty. Okay, so the bulk of the writing should be your ideas, the way you're putting this together, your synthesis. Okay, avoid super long quotes. That's padding your paper. You know this. Okay, so quotes should not be more than 1 or 2 lines. Use the best wording that you can from your sources. Don't do toss away stuff. Just do the best things, the best way they say it, the best information. Okay. Write in third person only. He, she, it. No yous. Okay. And even though it is your research, APA is focused on objectivity, and so that's the way you need to be for this particular paper. Edit to remove grammatical errors. What do I always say? Read it out loud to catch the small stuff. Include APA 7th edition in-text citations and provide correct APA 7th edition references paged. Please, please, please alphabetize by the author's last name. If it doesn't have an author and you're using the title as your first element, alphabetize by the first content words. We never alphabetize by a, an, or the. Okay, so the best guide goes in the B's, not the T's. Okay? You know from things I've done already, I'm not a big fan of the AI stuff. I think you should do your own editing. You should do your own work. You can use AI for the editing and revising, but you got to give me both versions. Okay? I'm relying on you to be upfront about what you're doing and do your work with integrity. Okay? Okay. This outline thing. The proposal has several goals, and one of the best ways to get at how you're going to put this together is to look at it piece by piece. Okay, the paper itself piece by piece. You have all of your information and stuff kind of running around your head, or maybe you do good notes and things like that. You have your research logs. So this particular paper, the proposal, has several goals. One is to prove the problem exists, explain past attempts and or suggestions for solving the problem, explain the goals and steps in your own solution, and then prove your solution is the best option and is feasible. Okay, that feasible part is going to be probably the most challenging part of your proposal, and we'll get to there in just a little bit. And then, of course, provide a call to action. Please come do this. Okay. Think about the appeals we discussed in the previous unit. You're not going to be analyzing the ethos, pathos, and logos, but you're going to be using those. So when you said Dwork's paper had awesome use of logos, and it did it this way, this way, this way, this way, think about that and do that yourself, right? So if you know what a good thing looks like, make it look like that. Okay. You're going to use, for the outline, I just want an outline. Okay. Don't write your paper and turn it in. Okay. I want the outline. I want you to see kind of where your holes might be. I want you to see where the little pieces might go. And I want you to do this the way it's written. Okay. You may not realize this, but when you do stuff that goes against what we're saying in the instructions, you're basically telling us that we don't know what we're talking about. You know more about this whole writing thing than your instructors do. And I know that's probably not what's in your head, but that's how it comes across. So trust me that these particular steps are going to help you be a better writer overall. It's not just about checking the boxes for English class. Hopefully you'll be able to use these skills all together and in various pieces as you go through the rest of your career. Okay. So, the main good thing about an outline is it gives you a chance to practice your organization before you write the big paper. Okay? And sometimes we see things, we set things down, we think we've got everything, and we go through the outline and we're like, oh yeah, that whole solution part. Might need that. Okay. So, be intentional, choose deliberate sections, make sure that you're following the directions here. There's a couple other things that I want to look at real quick, but there's a couple of questions that come up every time. Okay, can I use sources from my bibliography in this part of the project? Yeah, I hope so. I hope you do. I hope a lot of them are helpful. Can I use new sources? Of course. Just make sure they're also in the research log. How many sources do I need? You're going to have to cite at least 7, 4 of which have to be scholarly or trade. And all of them should be in your research log. Okay. Do I need to cite sources in the outline? Not necessarily, although it can be helpful for later on when you're actually writing the paper. If you say, okay, in this section I'm going to use this particular source, and you can just put the first element from the citation there, or you can put the whole thing in there. It's up to you. Okay. The outline guide, I know I'm going through 5 different things here, but the outline guide, you have 2 different pieces, okay? The required sections, Section A and Section B, we're going to do in that first rough draft discussion board, okay? Section A is the problem, okay? You're going to introduce the problem to readers, include at least a paragraph to introduce the issue and multiple paragraphs following to explain it from different perspectives. So whatever your discipline is, there are different levels of expertise in that career field, and so maybe this one affects the lower levels more than it does the higher levels, or the other way around, and you've got to figure out what that looks like from their perspective, okay, and then show that to your readers. Section B is the past attempted or proposed solutions, things that didn't work, or maybe things that didn't go far enough, or things that targeted the wrong echelon there. Discuss what others have tried or suggested to fix the problem, analyze their strengths and weaknesses. Maybe they had some good ideas, but feasibility is a problem, cost is a problem, actual putting it into place is a problem, that kind of thing. That's all you're going to do for that first rough draft when we do the discussion board posts for peer review. Please don't put the whole paper in there. We do not have time for that. Other people don't have time for that. So just sections A and B, we'll work through that with the peer review sheet, and we'll go on. Speaking of, I got to make sure I put that in the little guy. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, the rest of this is what you're going to put in for the second draft that I'm going to look at and say, okay, so your section D, you need that. Okay, so section C is your proposition and goals. Okay, so here's my formulation for the solution, although you have to, here's a problem, here's a thing for the solution. Okay. Be careful with the I's and me's. We tend to do that a lot, and APA is just not having it. So, your thesis statement goes in the 3rd section. Okay, the proposition and goals. That's going to be a paragraph. And then comes, okay, so how do we actually do this? I want to, or the best way to fix the problem with grade inflation is to do these things. Okay, so here's the things we have to do. We have to train the people who are doing the grading. We have to train, we have to write better rubrics. We have to, whatever the steps are in that. So use a step-by-step process approach to explain the steps in your solution. Identify who or what will be responsible for each step, and then include multiple paragraphs, one major step per paragraph. Maybe there are a few places where you have a major step, but then you realize, oh, they've got to do this, this, and this as well in order to go to the next step. So do that. Section E is the feasibility of solution. Explain the money, laws, regulations, other changes needed for this plan that you've done in Section D. Explain why this is the best solution and address counter arguments. People who would disagree with this idea would say X. And then why are they wrong, or why doesn't it matter? Okay, so we've already talked about this. Okay. Include multiple paragraphs. Explain why it's the best solution. All of that. Section F is your conclusion and call to action. Sum up your points from your proposal. Here's what we're going to do. Okay, this is needed. If we do this, X will happen. Less burnout, more correct kinds of coding or whatever. End with a call to action, and this is a paragraph. Okay, it might be a little bit of a longer paragraph, but it's just a paragraph. Okay, make sure that you have your APA 7th edition references page. Is however long it takes for you to do 7 or more sources. Okay, now there is an outline guide that will help you actually write the sections, and it's very detailed, and I'm not going to read this to you, but I am going to kind of walk through a few things. So in Section A, because this is what we're going to do for that first peer review, for the only real peer review, what's the purpose? It's to introduce the problem and prove it exists. Convince your readers it is a pervasive and important enough problem that it needs a solution. We need to find out how to fix the problem with burnout. Okay. Be sure to cite sources as your proof throughout the section. A lot of you are doing things that are talking about burnout in, law enforcement, in health, in, psychiatry, in all kinds of things. And so show us where you found out this is a big problem. Okay. You also want to identify several causes and or effects of the problem using a paragraph for each. Okay. So data to prove the problem exists, the severity of the problem, causes of the problem, who the problem affects and how, what groups of people, individual accounts of people who have experienced the problem, perhaps, potential effects if the problem is not solved, other points of discussion that add to your overall argument in this section. Okay? Section B, past attempts to solve the problem and or suggestions from research. Okay, again, multiple paragraphs. So you need to show us at least one place where somebody tried to fix this. It didn't work, or it didn't do enough. Okay? And that's a lot of what happens in any career field. You have a problem that exists, and okay, so again, the burnout issue. So not only do we need more caretakers, more folks in this field, just basically strength in numbers, but we also need to improve the work-life balance. And I used to joke, still do, it's not really a joke, that there is no balance. It's a juggling game. You get one ball all prettied up and throw it as high as you possibly can and take care of something else before it hits the ground. That's kind of how life is for a lot of us. But what could you do to fix that? What could you do to make it easier for somebody to be a doctor, a nurse, medical coder, EMT, firefighter, law enforcement officer, any of that? Okay, those are all very stressful jobs. And why are they stressful? Well, we have a lot of people involved and not a lot of time to do things. How do we fix that? Or how do we at least make it better? Okay. Same thing with the past attempts to solve. Proposed solutions. People have suggested different things, but maybe it hasn't happened. Lots of times, and this is, for teachers, a lot of times people say, oh, we'll raise your salary. And sometimes they do a little bit, but most of the time, it's not so much about the money, although more money would be helpful. What is really needed is something else. Maybe some extra money would be good. Getting paid appropriately for what you're doing and your level of education and all that fun stuff is important. And so is, though, having support when things get weird. Having people who understand as your boss, having people who understand in HR, that kind of stuff. So, include in each paragraph or in a separate paragraph your analysis of what seems promising in these former solutions and what seems to be lacking. Okay, everybody says money. Okay, well, we've added money, and it really hasn't helped in the burnout situation. Why? Because it doesn't matter if you're making $1 million if you have no time to spend it. Okay, so that's the A/B stuff. That's for that first, for that rough draft peer review. Okay, the rest of this is your own stuff, right? It's the purpose. Okay, so I want this particular problem to be addressed this way because I think this is the best way to do it because, okay, it's a little complicated, but you can do it. It'll be good. On this proposal essay outline guide, it gives you the sections a little bit about what the purpose is, how you're supposed to do it, and what questions you could answer in that paragraph or section the way we go. Okay. Now, back when we were talking about how this is going to be written, we talked about you have to have, for this APA paper, you have to have a title that makes sense. Okay. Don't use proposal draft. Don't use the same thing you had for your rhetorical analysis, that kind of stuff. Okay, so what is this and what are you trying to do? Okay. And then you'll have your title page, your paper, and then the references page. Well, in that paper, you have to have certain headings. And the headings are going to be the same thing as the section. Section A, colon, the problem. Section B, colon, past attempts to solve the problem. Okay? Or suggestions from research, that kind of thing. So your headings, are going to be the A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I think it's just E, F. Yeah. Okay? So you don't need a heading for introduction. You don't need a heading for conclusion. Well, the conclusion has its own thing. So, section A, the problem. Okay? That's what your introduction is called. So, there you go. Let me know if you have questions. I'm sure we will have lots of things to talk about, but there's quite a bit of documentation in this particular module, so take your time and read things. There's only one, only one section that calls for mark as reviewed. Please do that. That's 5 points. It's not a huge amount of points, I know, but it's something that lets me know, okay, I did that part. Okay? Don't forget your research logs. You have to end the semester with at least 12. So if you're hovering in the 6 and 7 and 8, get busy. You can have as many as you need. Okay? I do give extra credit for extra work. Please don't just pad that up and go on. They're not great amounts of extra credit. So keep that in mind. Do what you have to do. Do what you need to do. Add in what you work with. Okay? Get credit for what you do and try to keep up. In this unit, there are a couple of places where I couldn't give it wiggle room. And those are things like I know the self-evaluation, it's due on a day and then it's gone. Okay, there's no wiggle room on that one. Do it early, that's fine. Just don't try to do it late because it won't let you in. I think there's one other one like that, but I'm not sure which one that is. So if you come across something that you're like, it was just due yesterday. Yes, it was due yesterday. I have no, there are certain things I have no control over. So check things out, make sure you know what you're doing, work through things, do what you need to do. One more thing about, the proposal is your big deal. Okay, we're going to take the same idea process and use it for the multimodal presentation at the end. So it's the same thing. You don't have to add stuff to that. We are going to use a program in Microsoft called Sway, and we'll have some fun with that. So anyway, let me know if you have questions. You know how to get a hold of me. You have my email.